covered some of the jobs that you've had throughout the years. I know a basic trajectory to today, but I would certainly be curious to hear more about it from your perspective and what you've learned in those jobs.
Well, when you're as old as I am, you've had plenty of time to have a lot of different jobs. And until I retired from the FBI, I think I had worked every day of my life, right? Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I worked at a Hinks department store up on Shattuck Avenue. One summer I was what they called a transfer boy. You took an envelope from this office and brought it to the other office, or you took the cash to the cashier. Just handy boy. Mm-hmm. And another summer at Hinks, I was the stock boy in the cosmetics department. And that was a very difficult job for me because they'd say, okay, Gary, go down to the storage area and get 4 Estee Lauder Cream 23s. I didn't have the slightest idea what it was, and I certainly didn't know where it was. So I really struggled with that job.
Were you living in this house when you were working there?
Oh, no. This was my grandparents' house. My mother and brother and, my whole family, my father, mother, brother, and sister, lived on 1818 Short Street. That's about 3/4 of a mile from here. So I didn't get to participate in sports in high school because I was always working. And the lesson there in those jobs was simply, for me, if you've got a job, well, you just do it, whatever the job is. Mm-hmm. When I graduated from high school, I immediately got a job at the Rose Street Pharmacy. It was a pharmacy at the corner of Rose and Shattuck, not too far from here. And I was the delivery boy. They had a car, and when they prepared a prescription, I would take it to their house. Mm-hmm. They certainly don't do anything like that nowadays. And then from that job, I went on active duty in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And we've already had an episode on video about my Navy experiences and what I learned.
How many years was that?
Just short of 2 years active duty in the Navy. I got out a month early so that I could register for my first year of college. Mm-hmm. So I went in September and got out in August. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. What was the reason you were doing those jobs as a teenager? Like, was it just to have a job and to do the job and that's what you learned, or was it to contribute to the family, or was it to save up for college? Like, why have a job? Why not do sports?
Well, it certainly wasn't to save up for college because I didn't anticipate going to college at that time. Why did I have those jobs? I think the culture at that time was that if you could work, you did. Mm-hmm. And it added some small amount of money to supporting myself, I guess. I bought all my own clothes in high school.
And that was more important than sports or music or extracurriculars?
Yeah.
And then you went to college?
Okay, well, after my active duty Navy, I signed up for West Connocosta Junior College, WCCJC, belt buckle, WCCJC. And that was a good time. I enjoyed the classes and met your grandmother.
As an adult. Had you met her as a kid? Did you ever meet her before college?
Well, no, we were at Garfield Junior High School at the same time. She was in the 7th grade and I was in the 8th grade. But as far as I know, we probably saw each other in the halls, but we didn't know each other, so there was no recognition there. Yeah, while I was in the first years of college, met your grandmother, and we were married before I had my 2 years of junior college.
Were you working while at school?
Oh yeah, I had a job at a gas station in Richmond. And the lesson I learned there was that gas station owner was very, very aware of what I was doing. Even though he wasn't there I was working nights. And he wasn't there, but the next morning he would come in and he knew how many quarts of oil I sold, and he knew everything. I was very surprised at the amount of control that he had over his inventory. And I don't understand to this day how he did it. I made an error one day. A guy came in for an oil change. So I put his car up on the overhead and I let the oil out, but the mistake was I wasn't letting the engine oil out. I was letting the transmission oil out. And I didn't know that. I was an inexperienced gas station employee. So when I went to put the oil in, it was already full. And oh my God. So I discovered that I had drained his transmission oil. So I had to take 2 or 3 quarts of transmission oil and replenish that. And the next day he says, "How come we're short of transmission oil?" And I had to confess that I had made that mistake. We got married and I kept working there for a long while. The first summer after we got married, I worked for Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, and I was on a team of 3, an old-timer, another young college student, and me. We were planting telephone poles. With the truck, we would dig a hole and put the pole down and tamp the dirt. And
You'd backfill it with dirt, not concrete?
Yeah, backfill. Yeah. It was pretty deep, and we don't have freeze here, so the concrete's not so important. But the guy we were working with, the old timer, he was kind of a grouchy old guy, and I think he resented the fact that this other young guy and I were college students, and he had never had any college. So he liked to challenge us, and sometimes it was a good learning experience. But I remember one day, he says, "Okay, guys, we've got to fill a hole." And he says, the hole is 1.5 inches deep, it's circular, it's 1.5 feet wide, and so many shovelfuls make a cubic foot. How many shovelfuls of concrete should we load up into the truck to fill this hole? So the other young guy and I did some simple calculations, and we came up with a number of shovelfuls. So we went, filled the hole, and he was complaining that we didn't really come up with a good number of shovelfuls. And he wouldn't admit that the hole wasn't exactly 1.5 inches deep. It wasn't exactly 1.5 feet in diameter, and his shovelfuls per cubic foot was wrong. So I learned there that sometimes the person who thinks you're wrong is the one who is wrong. And that summer, Basin was born. I remember buying a box of cigars that said, "It's a boy." And I gave the cigars to the scrumpy old guy, and he was happy with that gift. So I graduated from junior college, and I told your grandmother Joan. I says, okay, I guess I better go to work. She says, no, you go on to college. You're gonna get your 4 years of college. And I thought that was good advice for me. So I signed up at San Francisco State. We moved over, rented an apartment in San Francisco.
Close to the campus?
No, not very close to the campus. I had to drive from.
You drove?
It was on Balboa on the north side of Golden Gate Park, and San Francisco State was well south of San Francisco State.
And how much, like, was it like a dear cost to rent an apartment in the city, or was it pretty reasonable?
Oh, very reasonable.
Yeah.
Very reasonable. I got the GI Bill, so being married with a child, I think I got about $120 a month. And I got a job at the San Francisco Jewish Center as a swimming instructor and lifeguard. And that provided probably $50 or $60 a month. But we were able to live on something less than $200 a month.
Yeah. And then you had to pay for college as well, which probably wasn't.
Well, I got the GI Bill.
Oh, so they paid for it.
I got the GI Bill, which was, I think the GI Bill when we first started was $60 a month, plus my work. No, the GI Bill was more than that. Well, anyway, we got by.
Yeah.
I do remember there was a restaurant in Berkeley, in San Francisco called the $1.09 Steak. And for $1.09, you got a small steak, a baked potato, and a small salad. And we would save up for a month or two in order to get the $2.18 so we could go buy it.
Living large.
living big, right?
So you
Well,
worked at the
what
JC.
lesson did I learn from working at the Jewish Community Center? I guess I learned that Jews were just normal people. There was nothing extraordinary about them.
Didn't know how to swim, and then they knew how to swim.
Well, I enjoyed the lifeguard job. It was easy. You just stood there and watched people. What was funny is it was an indoor pool, and they supplied swimming suits. There was ugly cotton-looking suits, baggy, for both men and women. And what I noticed was the women most frequently brought their own swimming suits. Uncomfortable, tight, rather than wear the comfortable, free suit, they wanted to bring their own suits. Another thing that I thought was funny was every once in a while a man would come in the nude, because at the YMCA's, men swam in the nude in those days.
Because it was only men.
But it wasn't. It was men and women.
I mean, at the YMCA.
At the Y, it was, yeah. And it was funny. Sometimes a guy would come in, go swimming, and then he come over and says, "Would you get me a towel?"
Oh,
I didn't notice.
Were you teaching kids or grown-ups?
My specialty was kids and problem adults.
What does problem adult mean?
They didn't know how to swim, and they weren't quite sure they wanted to, or they could. And I enjoyed that. I kind of made up my own system. For a problem adult, the first step was get a handful of water and splash it on your face. It was that basic.
Yeah.
But almost everybody learned to swim to one degree or another.
And how long were you there?
Well, that was 2 years. After 2 years of junior college and 2 years at San Francisco State.
And you graduated then?
Yeah, I had a major in math and science. I wanted to be a school teacher, and I had a lot of education courses. I remember, I think it was my senior year, I had two courses, education courses. One were 3 units and one for 2 units, and they were taught at the same time. So I had 5 hours a week of that course, or combined courses. And at the same semester, I had a scientific glass blowing class, and it was only worth a half a unit. Mm-hmm. So the education courses were 10 times as much as the glass blowing. But all I did in the education course was go to class. I never studied, I never read, I just went to class. And for the scientific glassblowing class, I worked day and night and weekends and put in a lot of hours. And I got a AB in the education course, and I got a C in the glassblowing class.
Which was more valuable to your life, do you think?
Well, the education courses were absolutely worthless, in my opinion. I didn't learn anything of value. It was all theory and nothing practical.
Yeah.
And while I never, ever again blew scientific glass, I enjoyed that a lot, and I thought I learned a lot.
So you wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
How'd
High
that go?
school. I wanted to be a high school science teacher. So on graduation, I applied at various schools, and the only offer I got, I think was for, I think it was Salinas, and they wanted me to teach 5 solids a day, biology, chemistry, algebra, geometry, and I thought, there's no way in the world I could prepare
that much
5 lessons a day. I would be teaching all day and preparing all night. And the offer was for $4,200 a year. Mm-hmm. And I turned that down. I didn't think that was good. And I think the same week I turned that down, there was an ad in the newspaper here in Berkeley. They were looking for firemen and policemen. So I took the fire exam and I took the police exam. And at that time, my father was a lieutenant in the fire department. And I got first place in the fire department exam and third place in the police exam. And I turned the fire department job down because I didn't want to be under the influence of my father. I wanted to be my own person.
Yeah, yeah.
And was hired at the police department.
And how much was that a year compared to the
teaching? It was just under $6,000 a year. So yeah. I got a $2,000, almost a $2,000 raise just by turning down the...
and that was just required a high school degree, right? Or did the college help you in that career position?
Oh, no. At that time, the police department was only hiring college graduates. Oh. Berkeley Police was very advanced in that regard in those days.
Because they thought it helped the police work, or because so many people were able to go to college that they had a good pool, or why do you think that was?
Good question. Well, I think the history of Berkeley Police Department, going back to when it was first organized under August Vollmer as chief.
In what year?
Oh, the early 1900s, 1905, something like that. He wanted scientific policing. He was largely responsible for the development of the lie detector, first police department to go on bicycles, first police department to have a patrol car. And he was very closely connected to the university and worked with people in this, University of Cal, Berkeley. And he worked with people in the science department. So I think...
So having that helps you get your job?
Yeah, yeah.
And what was it like at the police department?
Well, it was an interesting a lot of little memories now are flashing through. My first day on duty, I was still in civilian clothes. I hadn't gotten my uniform yet, and there was a murder right not too far from here, and a man and a woman were killed, and the guy responsible was jealous of the woman being with that other man, and there was blood about a quarter of an inch thick all over the whole kitchen floor, and my sergeant says, "Gary, do you know how to use a shotgun?" And I said, "Yeah, I can use it." He says, "Okay, we want you to stay here tonight. Turn off all the lights and you sit here in case."
Alone.
Yeah, this is my first night as a policeman. He says, "In case the guy comes back, well, you'll be able to arrest him." I didn't know anything about arrests.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know if I was allowed to shoot him. I didn't know.
How much training had you had?
None. That was my first day of employment.
Oh my gosh. And how long were you with the police here?
It was 3 years. Mm-hmm. I got hit once with a hammer. I had an auxiliary policeman ride along, and we got a police call that some guy had walked out of a mental health facility. And they gave a description. They were driving down the street. There he is on the sidewalk.
In his robe and slippers.
I got out of the car, walked up to him, and says, "Hi, how you doing?" And he got a hammer and hit me right in the ribs with a hammer. Fortunately, I had a leather jacket on, and that took most of the blow. But what was funny is the paddy wagon came, and we arrested him and put him in the paddy wagon, and I got in the paddy wagon with him. And as we drove along, I says, why did you hit me? He says, "I don't know. You seem like a pretty nice guy."
Interesting.
Had one shooting experience here in the Berkeley Police. Some guy was running from the police, and we somehow managed to surround him. He was in the middle of the block, and in the middle of the block was this wooden shed. And a policeman who I had very little respect for before and after the incidents, he shot into that shed, not knowing if that guy was really in there or if I was on the other side of the shed. But fortunately, his bullets were in such bad shape that they didn't have any power. They just went poop, poop.
And what were maybe some takeaways that you learned from that job?
Well, I guess one of the main things I learned is that policemen are just regular people. Regular people in that job. We drove our own cars in those days. Mm-hmm. We didn't have police cars. We drove our own cars. The city installed a siren and a radio, and you had to install a light that had a red lens that fit on top of it. And we got paid mileage. Each month you submitted a mileage report and got a stipend for your mileage, paying for gas and maintenance. And that amount allowed you to buy a new car. Mm-hmm. I think it was usually about $50 a month or something like that. And so I bought a brand new 59 Chevy.
What color?
It was blue.
It was a...
Police blue. I didn't ever think of that before.
It was a car, not a truck. I think I've seen it.
Yeah, there were certain rules. You couldn't have a station wagon. You couldn't have a convertible. It couldn't be an outlandish color.
Did Gran drive at that time, or just you?
She learned to drive when we lived in San Francisco.
Oh, that's right.
And back in those days, almost all cars were manual shift. Mm-hmm. And to learn to drive a manual shift on a hilly thing, that's difficult. But she did very well.